Good evening and welcome to 365 Days of Amazing Stories with Theo Mayer. Here we are on day 205. And I wanted to share a story about my day earlier in the day. So, biodynamic farming comes from the whole line of practices that Rudolf Steiner initiated during the course of his life period. Biodynamic farming is a little strange, I have to say. Some of the practices just seem kind of, a little bit magical, I would say. And almost like, really? What is this about? So there's a lot of preparations that you can apply to your land. And one of them is a manure preparation that it's actually cow manure that has been packed into a cow horn and then buried. Usually you do this right around the fall equinox, and then you dig it up around the spring equinox. And so you can imagine having a cow horn that's packed with this cow manure. It's a, nice amount. Well, what it is recommended that you do is to take this manure and to mix it with water. You can dilute it as much as you want, and as is true with homeopathic medicines, a little bit typically will take care of a lot. So I got some of this preparation that Harold Hoven had put together, a longtime biodynamic farmer who has mentored me through many years. He ran the farm at Rudolf Steiner College in Fair Oaks, California. And when I would be up there doing teacher training courses for Waldorf teacher training, Harold would be there, and I would often find myself out in the garden and would help out a little bit. And always he would inspire me with new information. So at a meeting of, I think, Northern California biodynamic farmers, I got some preparation from Harold. It sat in my refrigerator for a couple of years. And finally, I pulled it out when I had a bunch of young people coming up to do a little farming work on my property. And I thought this would be a great time to get this out and use it. So I used a 55-gallon drum and filled it up with probably about 35 or 40 gallons of water, put the manure in there, and then used actually broom to stir the preparation. And when I've done this before, the stirring is very important. It's very important that you do it for a while, and as you do it, to sort of put your consciousness into it. They say that water can carry a lot of energy. So if you imbue that water with love, it'll be loving water that you're spreading over your property. You can imbue it with whatever you'd like, I guess. Now, I also had one other preparation that I added. And this was a preparation that I made. Now, there was one time I was walking around at the farm at Rudolf Steiner College with Harold, and I was looking around, and I was like, how can it be that you don't have pocket gophers here? And he just turned to me and he said, Theo, we don't have gophers here. I was like, how can it be that you don't have gophers here? And he just said, well, we don't have gophers here. And he just left it at that. So I became very interested and curious and began to do some research around all of this. And as I was doing the research, I thought, he's got some secret here. I know he does. And it came to me before I even found out any information about it. I thought, I bet he's getting gophers, skinning them and incinerating the skins, and then using it over the land. Now, I, at another meeting, talked to Harold about this, and, he smiled and nodded his head. And so then I did a little more research about it, and actually, he told me in that conversation, he said, yes, Theo, that's correct, but he said you need to incinerate the skins when Venus is in Scorpio, the constellation Scorpio, which is a beautiful constellation that if you're in California, you can see it now in the night sky. Usually you'll want to be looking toward the south. Scorpio is typically, or Venus is in Scorpio, typically October, November. So anyway, I incinerated some gopher skins at the appropriate time, again, a couple of years ago. And I thought, I'm dispersing this liquid over the landscape. I am going to add the ash from the gopher skins. So I stirred this in as well. Stirred and stirred and stirred. One direction and then the other, back and forth. And it's really cool, if you stir a lot of water, the vortex that you create as you stir it. I had a lot of these young people disperse amounts of water over the land and ask them to put their energy into it and however they wished, which they thought the whole thing was kind of cool, and they did it. But I had quite a bit left over, so there was one evening that I went and got what I had prepared and began to put it over the landscape. I did this for about 2 hours. And I have to say that at the end of that 2 hours, there was a remarkable shift that had taken place. Inside of me, and also I just felt the land had a quality to it that it didn't before. It felt enlivened. If I closed my eyes, I felt like there was like this golden radiance that was just coming off of the land. I'd gone around with 5-gallon buckets that I only filled like 2.5 gallons. And I had a little whisk broom that I used and just started throwing the water just wherever I walked. Harold told me that you have to apply this stuff 3 or 4 years in a row to actually get rid of the gophers. And I have applied the powder before to my land on 2 other occasions besides this. And pocket gophers, they're just such a nuisance. You can have this beautiful garden growing. And I tend to try to protect my plants with wire mesh, welded wire mesh. That's very small, 1/2-inch openings, so that the gophers just can't get in. But somehow, in one of my beds especially, that I used to plant a lot of squash in and beans, I'd have these plants, they were doing marvelously. And they'd come out the next day and they'd be dead, especially the beans and the squash. And it was very discouraging. Those little critters can do so much damage to trees as well. Trees that I would have in the ground for 5 or 6 years, they will come along and eat the roots away until the tree is falling over. Anyway, more stories. So I felt incredibly enlivened by putting that preparation on as well. And I really think that there's something to it. So I just wanted to share all that. Biodynamic farming is really worth looking into, and there are a lot of esoteric practices that seem to be extremely effective. What is this all about? Really, it's imbuing our land, our physicality, with spirit. It's a wonderful thing.